So again, we're doing the 11th grade kickoff to college. My name is Devin McCarthy James, and I am the College Foundation of North Carolina Regional Representative for the 828 West region. So I am one of 9 regional reps, and we cover throughout the state, and I cover from sort of Buncombe County, beautiful Asheville, all the way out west into Cherokee County. So I handle things out here and try to help folks learn more about planning for, applying to, and paying for college. And before I took this role, I was actually a high school teacher and then a high school counselor. So that's sort of the way that I approach my position is from that experience working with students and families in that 9 through 12 world and those experiences. And I'm going to let my colleague, Brittany Privet, go ahead and introduce herself.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Devin. My name is Brittany Privet, and I am also a regional representative for the College Foundation. I am on the opposite side of the state. I work down in southeastern North Carolina. So I work with schools, students, families, adult learners alike down in the 910 area code. And my personal background when it comes to my profession, I was in college admissions before this. I've worked at 2 different UNC system schools in recruitment and admissions. So I'm going to share with you some tips and tricks of the trade when it comes to applying to college and how to strengthen that application. We'll definitely touch on that this evening. So we'll go ahead and get started. The first portion of our presentation is going to be on the admissions side of things, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Devin, and she's going to talk to you a little bit more about the financial aid process. But I want to make sure that everybody's on the same page about who we are as an organization. The College Foundation of North Carolina is a partnership between different entities throughout our state, including the College Foundation Incorporated, North Carolina's community college system, the Department of Instruction, our independent colleges and universities, which we also refer to as our private institutions, the North Carolina Education Assistance, the North Carolina Education Assistance Authority, and the University of North Carolina system. We are a state-based collaboration, and we serve families within the state to help you plan, apply, pay, and save for college and a career in the state of North Carolina. We've served students for over 20 years. I know when I was in high school, I used CFNC to apply to college, and I graduated the same year the iPhone came out. So CFNC has been in this game for a while, and we are here to help. So lots of resources. Along with our 9 regional representatives, we also have a fantastic call center. So if you ever have questions about your account, about where to start when it comes to planning for college, to get contact information from different universities across the state, feel free to call our toll-free hotline at 866-866-CFNC, and our awesome call center will be there to help you. So when it comes to creating a CFNC account, it is a free process, and we do recommend, no matter where you are in the high school journey, to go ahead and set up a free account, because most high school seniors in the state of North Carolina will have one by the time they graduate. We recommend that you have one early on, just so that you can start planning and gathering information for the college application process and the financial aid process. But as a senior, you are going to be able to complete your residency determination interview through CFNC. You can send electronic transcripts to colleges for free. That is for our public school students in the state of North Carolina. You can apply to all of our community colleges through cfnc.org. You can also apply for career and college promise programs. And last but not least, you can apply to most of our 4-year institutions in the state through cfnc.org. So it's kind of a one-stop shop for North Carolina students. And we highly recommend that you and a parent set up an account for yourselves so that you can keep all of your college and career planning information in one place. If you are on our website, there is a tab that says Plan for Your Future, and we have a convenient timeline here to help students and families start thinking about things that they should do each year from the 8th grade on through adult life when it comes to setting yourself up for success when it comes to planning for college or a career. As a junior, your junior year is almost over. So we're going to talk a lot about what we want you to start focusing on now at the end of your junior year and into your senior year. We want you to know college deadlines, and we have a comprehensive list of all of the state's college deadlines on our site. So definitely check that out so you can be prepared for your first semester of senior year, which is going to be busy. I'm going to tell you that right now. We also want you to start thinking about the financial aid and residency process. There are a few things that you can do over the summer as a junior to start preparing for these processes. So definitely check out the links that we have provided on our site. And then also, like we said before, public school students can send their high school transcript to colleges for free through CFNC, regardless if they apply through our site or not. So keep in mind that, again, we have a lot of information on our sites, lots of resources to comb through. We're going to touch on a lot of them this evening, but I highly recommend that you explore our site as you progress through the rest of your junior year. So first things first, when we're looking at college, we want you to start thinking about what's going to be the best institution for you. We want you to find your fit. And there's lots of different opportunities in the state of North Carolina. When we talk about our community colleges, our public institutions, and our private institutions combined, we have over 111 colleges in the state of North Carolina. So it is a pretty daunting list to look through. We want to give you some tips on how to narrow that list down. So there are a few things that we want you to start thinking about. The first thing is major. We want you to start thinking about what majors are out there and what you want to do. If you have no clue what you want to do, that is perfectly fine. It is 6:13 and I still have no idea what I'm eating for dinner. So I don't want you to think that you have to have your whole life planned out right now as a junior in high school, but we want you to start thinking about where you can see yourself career-wise. So if you haven't figured that out yet, check out their Plan for Your Future tab, go to Plan for a Career and take some of our different assessments that will give you information about what skills you possess, what your interests are, and match you with different careers in North Carolina through nccareers.org. It is a great resource. So if you don't know what you want to major in, you could start there. But if you know what you want to major in, start looking at colleges that provide that. That's the first step in looking for a school, is making sure that they have the program of study that you would like to pursue. I used to work at a school way in the mountains of Western North Carolina, and I had a lot of students who would come up to me so confident, and they would say, "Brittany, I'm coming to your school. I'm going to study marine biology, and I can't wait." And it was always a tough conversation to let them know that we didn't have marine biology because we weren't anywhere close to the ocean. And so it was going to be a little bit difficult for them to study something like that all the way in Western North Carolina. So before you start this process, start looking at schools that actually have the major that you'd like to pursue, and start asking questions. I'm not judging students for assuming that that schools have majors that they don't possess, but definitely start having that conversation with admissions counselors and doing your research on CFNC to see what majors are out there, because you would be surprised at what colleges actually have what you're looking for. If you have no idea what you want to do, you've taken some learning assessments and you have kind of an idea, but you're not sold on something yet, that is fine. Your first year of college is what we call an exploratory year. Most schools won't allow you to declare a major until your sophomore year anyway. So it's okay to have an idea and not have your heart set on a specific area. Most colleges have amazing advising centers to help you along that path. And they're going to have people there to encourage you and help you explore different options. And to be quite honest with you, as a junior right now, some of you may be going into new majors that are popping up all over the place. Majors and career opportunities change throughout time. So just know it's okay not to know. We have you, we have your back, and these colleges also have resources to make sure that you're on track to achieving your goals and going into the right fit when it comes to major for you. The second thing I want to touch on is location. Start thinking about where you can see yourself physically going to school. Do you want to go far away from home? Do you want to stay close to home? How far do you want to be away from your family? Also think about how far your family wants you to be away from them, because sometimes it's the same, sometimes it's not. So start thinking about that, and start thinking about, when it comes to location, what resources are available. Do you want to go to a school in an urban center where you're going to have lots of opportunities for internships in town? Or would you rather go to a school in a more insulated environment where the whole town is supportive of the institution that you attend? When it comes to location, think about the weather. How do you feel that you perform best? Are you more of a snow person? Because we have some amazing schools in Western North Carolina, large and small, public and private, community college and 4 years. Or if you'd like to be at the beach where I live, we have tons of opportunities out here too. Start thinking about where you see yourself, what area and environment makes you feel comfortable, and what resources you're going to need to be successful. And think about the location of the institutions that you're looking at. When you're on our college search, I'm not sure if you can see, but above University of Chapel Hill, there is a tab that says View All on Map. So as you're searching for these schools, you can look on an interactive Google map if you click map view, so you can see where these schools are located in relation to where you live. The last major thing that we want you to look at when you're thinking about your fit is going to be the size of the institution. I worked at 2 different schools in the UNC system, one of which had about 27,000 students when I was there. Their freshman class was about 4,000 students. So we had a very large, diverse population that came to campus. We were in a small town, and students got a lot of opportunities to meet people from all walks of life and really immerse themselves in our school environment, in our collegiate environment. The other school I worked at had less than 4,000 students total, and students got a lot more personal attention. They got to know their peers in a more in-depth way, and they worked together. It was more of a community style school, if that makes any sense. I don't think one was better or worse than the other one, and students flourished on both campuses, but that's something that you're going to want to think about. Do you want to have one-on-one attention with your professors, or do you find yourself to be more of an independent learner? Do you want to meet new people every day, or would you like to set up a core group of friends that you navigate this college process together? Start thinking about the size of the institution and how it's going to best serve you and what learning environment you learn best in. Do you learn best in your larger classes or your smaller classes? You can search that on our college search by looking at student population size, and you can toggle that from, I think, up to 50,000 students, and we don't have any schools in the state of North Carolina with 50,000 students, all the way down to less than 1,000. So definitely check out our college search and make sure that you're looking at schools that are going to be the best fit for you, not your friends, or not what you think you're supposed to do. Go into the school that you know that you're going to be successful. We've all tried on a pair of jeans before that made us feel really confident, and you got a feeling when you tried those jeans on. You just know that you're going to go out and seize the day with your favorite jeans. I can't tell you how you're going to get that feeling. I can't tell you what jeans are going to be the best fit for you. That's something that you find out on your own. So it's the same with colleges. You get a feeling of confidence and belonging, and nobody can tell you how you're going to get that feeling. We really want you to check out these schools and do your research and find that feeling for yourself. When it comes to choosing a college, another thing that we want you to think about is cost. And North Carolina has done an amazing job with working with our institutions in the public realm to find ways to lower the cost and make college more accessible for our students. So we have a brand new program that started a few years ago called the NC Promise program. We have 3 participating institutions in the UNC system: Elizabeth City State University, which is up in the northeastern corridor of the state; UNC Pembroke, which is in the southeastern portion of the state; and then Western Carolina is the farthest west institution in the state when it comes to 4-year schools. All 3 of those schools have $500 tuition per semester. So when it comes to tuition for the year, it's $1,000. Now you will have to pay student fees and room and board should you live on campus, but that is a pretty great deal, and there are ways to cut those costs that Devin will talk about later on. But just know that you have opportunities to attend school at a very affordable price here in North Carolina through the NC Promise program. For the other schools in the UNC system, they have a fixed rate. So whatever your tuition is your freshman year, it will be that tuition for 8 semesters, so 4 years. So just know we work really hard in North Carolina to keep college costs as low as possible, and this is just one example of how we do that. Now, when you're looking at schools, there are different types of schools, and I like to make sure that everybody's on the same page with the difference between public and private institutions. The major difference between public and private institutions is going to be the source from which they receive funding. So 16 public schools in the state receive state tax dollars to help the institution run and function. Our independent colleges and universities typically receive their funding from private sources. One is not better or worse than the other one. That's really the major difference. So if you're wondering, I like to ask students all the time what you think the difference between a public and a private institution. And a lot of students think that private schools are always more expensive. That's not the case. A lot of students also think that private schools are typically smaller. That's not always the case. So just keep in mind that the biggest difference is going to be the source from which they receive their money. We have 36 private institutions, not-for-profit private institutions in the state of North Carolina, 5 of which are historically Black colleges and universities. One of those historically Black colleges and universities is one of the oldest HBCUs in the entire nation. We're very proud to house the most HBCUs, public and private, in the state of North Carolina. when it comes to the country as a whole. So North Carolina is definitely known for our HBCUs and our phenomenal historically Black colleges and universities and the alumni that they've produced. We have 3 colleges that are for women that are private institutions here in the state, and then 1 two-year college that we refer to as an independence college. Wide variety of institutions, wide variety of financial aid. So definitely check out those institutions, and you'll be able to find those on the college search tool on cfnc.org. We have 58 community colleges in the state of North Carolina, and they are, to me, one of the best options for our students when it comes to a lot of different things. So you have opportunities to take classes at your local community college, no matter where you go to high school. You can take dual enrollment classes for free at your local community college and start gathering and gaining those college credits while you're in high school at a much cheaper cost. We also have of course, 2-year degrees, our associate's degrees and certificate programs at our community college programs in the state. And they range from everything from our transfer to a 4-year kind of track where students can take 2 years at the community college and transfer to a 4-year institution. Or we also have our workforce development and trade programs, which I find to be really neat. I live here in Wilmington, and Cape Fear Community College has a world-renowned boat making program. They also have a marine technology program where students have their own ship where they navigate the seas all the way to the Bahamas. I know Montgomery County Community College actually has one of the best taxidermy programs in the nation, and gunsmithing programs in the nation. So there are tons and tons of very interesting programs. My brother is actually attending a community college in Charlotte for landscape design and horticulture. So no matter what you want to do, there's tons of opportunities at North Carolina community colleges, from cosmetology to nursing to computer science to those workforce development programs that we touched on. Lots of opportunities. There's also summer courses. So if you decide to go to a 4-year institution, but you'd like to come home for the summer and be with family, you can take summer courses at our community colleges and transfer them back to your 4-year school. There's lots of ways to make community college work for you. I think the most important word in community college in that phrase is community. They are built to serve your community and serve them through workforce development and educating the community. So I highly recommend checking out the North Carolina Community College system. You don't have to go to your local community college. You can always move to another city in North Carolina and attend their community college. Lots of opportunities in North Carolina, but I definitely recommend that you check out what our community colleges have to offer for you as a junior and beyond. Now, when you're thinking about your college options, definitely explore using our college search tool, but there's other ways to do college exploration. And one of the most important is definitely going to be a college visit. College is an investment in your future. It costs money. Typically, for most people, you're paying something to attend college. So we want you to take the time to try out the institution, go on a college visit, check out how you feel on their campus, how you can navigate the campus, if you feel at home there. Like that jeans analogy I gave you earlier, that feeling that you get when you put on your favorite pair of jeans, we want you to have that same feel-good, confident feeling when you're in college. And you'll start to see when you go on these college tours, how you feel, what you like and what you don't like. So my biggest piece of advice would definitely go on a campus tour. But along with that campus tour, we want you to connect with college admissions reps, because they're the people that are going to be your gateway to that institution. Those college admissions counselors are going to be the people that answer all of your questions. They're going to be the ones that visit your high school. So definitely talk to your counselor about any upcoming college representative visits. They're also going to be the people a lot of times who are reading your application. So I definitely recommend connecting with admissions counselors on the campuses that you plan on applying to, build those relationships, because a lot of times they're going to be the ones that are working with you all the way up until you enroll in that specific campus. Talk to current students. You guys are juniors right now. I'm sure you have friends in your senior class at your respective high schools. Wherever they decide to go, if they're attending schools that you're thinking about applying to, make sure you keep in contact with them and see how their first year goes, because that's really indicative of the possible experience that you may have on those campuses. Now, I think that we should all take the visit admissions counselors and current students all together when making our decisions, because as we know, we're all very different. So your friend's experience may be totally different from your experience, but it is always nice to know what your friend's experiences are to inform your decisions. So definitely make sure that you are utilizing those traditional college exploration tools. But we have found ourselves this year in a global pandemic. So we have had to switch to virtual life, which I will say has made it so that there are a lot more resources available to you virtually now more than ever. So check out college websites, go on virtual tours if you aren't able to take a campus tour, and then check out schools' social media accounts. I know a lot of the schools in my region specifically do have amazing social media accounts where they're checking in with students weekly, updating them with campus happenings, scholarship opportunities, and doing a lot of social media live events where they're answering students' questions in real time. You can always subscribe to campus newspapers. Typically, they have that subscription information on their websites, but utilize your resources, cobble all of these college exploration tools together so that you can find the best fit for you. Now, make sure when you're looking at colleges that you need to make sure that you consider your academic match. So when you ask a college, what kind of students are you looking for? They're typically going to say our freshman profile is, and they're going to list a GPA, test scores, and some other attributes. Typically, when they say freshman profile, that means the middle 50% of students who were admitted the year before. So that gives you a gauge of kind of where students were last year. But when you ask that, please take in consideration, if they say that this is our freshman profile, that means the middle 50%. So they admitted 25% below that profile and 25% above that profile. The UNC system, and we do have some individual schools that have minimums that you must meet when it comes to college admission, but overall, they're going to tell you their range because college applications are typically holistically read. So they're going to look at who you are as a whole. You are not a walking GPA. You're not a walking 3.2. I know when I graduated high school, I didn't have a t-shirt with my GPA on it. So I don't want anybody to think that that's the only thing they're taking into consideration. They're looking at you as a whole to see if you're going to be successful on their campus, if you're going to contribute to their campus community, and that you're going to graduate. So keep that in mind when you are looking at the freshman profile of a school and you're preparing your application. Now, college admissions is typically a combination of these three things: academics and interest, extracurricular activities, and then your overall attitude. And that's going to be reflected on your letters of recommendation. Typically, we've all heard when it comes to academics, A's and B's get degrees. We want to see strong students. And that goes back to the fact that colleges are recruiting students that they would like to graduate from their institution and do well academically on their campus. But please know that we all understand, as a junior right now, a lot of you have had 2 years of non-traditional school, and that may have been really tough on some students. So please make sure that you explain that. Talk about what happened and talk about ways that you plan on finding success in the future. Talk about the resources that you'd like to utilize at your high school or on their campus. Not only does that show that you've taken initiative to plan for your future, but it also shows that you know how to take accountability and move forward through adversity. So academics are very important, but we also know that students right now are having a really tough time with virtual learning and all of the transitions you've all had to deal with. So make sure that you articulate that to colleges, and we'll talk about how to do that in just a second. Your interests along with your academics, just know that if I had a student, I'm reading their application and I hear that I see on their application they're applying for possibly engineering, I'm going to look closely at their math grades to see if they're ready for that engineering coursework. So when you express your interest, please know that we're going to look for that to be reflected on your academics. So make sure that your academics are in line with your interests. And again, if they're not, make sure that you explain that on your application. When it comes to extracurricular activities, there's no magic formula. We just want to see, and the higher ed community would like to see that students are involved in something that's positive and productive, and that they're showing that they're passionate about something. They're open to trying new things. Ultimately, if you're in a traditional high school, no pandemic, you're going to school every day, you're in school for about 40 hours a week. When you get to college, typically you're in school for 12 to 18 hours a week. So you have a huge amount of free time that you haven't had before. Colleges want to see that you know how to fill your free time now with something that's positive and productive, so that when you get to college, you're going to know how to do that and you're going to be able to adjust to having all of that free time. They also, again, want to see that you're bringing something to their campus community. So show them what you're involved in now so that they can see that you're going to be involved on their campus community. And the last thing is they want to see that you are doing something outside of school to show that you're a well-rounded student. Again, you're not a walking GPA, you're a whole person. So show them what you're interested in by showing them that you're involved in an extracurricular activity. That can include anything from sports, clubs, organizations, a part-time job, babysitting. There are even some applications that ask what household chores you do now. So anything, and I mean anything that you're doing that's positive and productive outside of school needs to go on your application. Last but not least, your attitude is super important. As you progress through school, people in your building and who are online virtually talking to you every day are here to help. Every person that got into education is there to help you achieve your goals. But they can't do that unless you engage and communicate with them and are a team player in the classroom. So make sure that your attitude reflects who you are and who you want to be in the future so that your teachers have a lot to write about when they write those letters of recommendation for you to help you get to college or receive a scholarship. All right, so typically when it comes to application materials, most schools are going to have the application itself and an application fee. Depending on the college, the application fee can vary from free all the way up to, I believe, $100 is the highest that I've heard. But there are fee waivers available. So if you are experiencing financial hardship, talk to your counselor to see if you can engage with the school to see if there are ways to waive the application fee. Please know that North Carolina community colleges, their applications are free regardless. They're also going to ask for your high school transcript, and that is going to show your grades from 9th grade to 11th grade, especially if you're applying in the fall semester. It's also going to show your senior schedule. The reason that you're not going to have your senior grades is because you're in your senior year. Those classes are not completed yet. So make sure that you know the junior year is a very important year academically because that's the last academic year that colleges are going to see until you finish your senior year, or at least your first semester. So you're going to need your transcripts, which you can send for free through CFNC at both community colleges and four-year institutions. For North Carolina community colleges, that's what you're going to need, your transcript and your application. For four-year schools, they're also going to need your test scores. And that's going to include SAT or ACT scores. Most schools don't have a preference on either or. And right now the UNC system is waiving test requirements. We are not quite sure if they're going to waive them next year for juniors. But please know that I've heard through the grapevine that decision will be made shortly in the coming weeks. So just keep an eye on the news and follow us on social media and we'll keep you updated about that. Some schools are going to require a resume, some schools are not. So make sure that you're looking at what application materials are needed at respective schools, because this is not an exhaustive list. Some schools are going to require letters of recommendation, some schools are not. Typically, rule of thumb with letters of recommendation, unless the school is asking for more, do not send more than 3 letters of recommendation, because that's when it gets a little overkill. We understand, that you're a great student. You do not have to stress yourself out or anybody else out. 3 is typically a good number to stick with. There's also a personal statement and college essay component on most college applications. Again, not every school requires these, but it's nice to know, and it's good to go ahead and start practicing those college essays now. And I'll be happy to answer questions about that after this presentation. And then some schools are going to ask for COVID-19 information, maybe an explanation of grades or a little more details about what your school did when it came to how your day looks, but just make sure that you are giving as much information possible so that colleges can make the best decision on your application. Now, there are different top college application deadline types, and we can talk about those quickly. Early action is typically the first deadline for colleges, along with early decision. Those are typically before or right around Halloween. So October 15th to November 15th is typically the bubble where you're going to find those early action and early decision deadlines. The difference between early action and early decision is that early decision is binding. So if you apply early decision to a college and you are accepted, you must go to that school. You sign a contract saying, I'm going to go to this school. You tell all the other schools that you've applied to that you are not going to their school, and that's where you go. That is not super common. You're going to find that at some private schools and a lot of our really competitive institutions in North Carolina. But just be careful when you're filling out these applications. If you want to apply early decision, know that that's the school that you really want to go to. That's where you're going to go. Regular decision is typically, I would say, mid-November on through February, depending on the school. We actually have some schools in North Carolina still accepting applications. So make sure that you're looking at deadlines. Now is a good time to start thinking about when you want to apply. And regular decision deadlines vary, and it depends on the institution. Rolling admissions is when schools will read your application, make a decision, and send it to you as they go. So as they're getting applications, they're reading them and sending those decisions out as they are making them, instead of sending them out on one specific decision day. Ultimately, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you apply early to colleges, and that's up to you, but I recommend that you apply early so that you have time to decide whether or not you want to go to the schools that you've applied to. You also have time to decide whether or not their financial aid award packages are a good fit for you and your family. You have time to visit these campuses. May 1st is the national deadline to commit to a college. So if you apply to schools early in your senior year, you have a lot of time to really work it out with your family to figure out what's going to be the best fit for you. When it comes to applying to North Carolina colleges, there are applications on cfnc.org. Whether the school has an application on our site or not, you can access all North Carolina college applications through cfnc.org. Some schools, though, will have their application on their website as well. Common application is a popular way that students apply to college these days. Some schools actually have a coalition application now, and then the Common Black College application is for HBCUs, and that is a national application as well. One thing that we're really excited about that we do every year here in North Carolina is College Application Week. This year, it is going to be October 18th through 22nd. Please write that date down, because your schools and your CFNC reps are going to be pushing you to complete residency, FAFSA, and your applications that week. And a great deal of colleges in the state of North Carolina, a huge chunk of schools in the state of North Carolina actually waive their application fees that week. So you can apply to a lot of schools in the state for free, get your FAFSA completed, get your residency completed. There's lots of resources available to you. And if you want to see how that week works, feel free to visit cfnc.org/C2C for Countdown to College. Now, some people love testing. I'm one of those weird people that I do not mind taking a test. I would rather take a test than write a paper any day of the week. But we also have people who are not the greatest with testing, and they would rather write a paper or sit in class all day. Everybody is different. But part of the application process for most schools is going to be submitting an SAT or ACT score. I will say that colleges look at your GPA to learn how disciplined you are, how hard of a worker you are, if you're turning in your work on time, if you're coming to school, all of that fun stuff. Your testing is going to show how well you critically think, how much information you've retained throughout high school. And I will say that both tell an academic story about you. So that's why they're going to ask for both. And there are some schools that are waiving these tests, and some schools are test optional now. It is very important that you communicate with the admissions office to figure out what's going to be the best bet for you. But please know both tests are pretty different, but it depends. I would definitely take practice tests on both the actstudent.org or collegeboard.org and just check out to see which one you feel more comfortable taking. Really, it depends on where you're applying and all that fun stuff when it comes to what test is going to be the best bet for you and how you learn. But I will say North Carolina juniors take the ACT for free each year. You can take that test score and submit it to colleges. You can also take the test again. There is a cost for both tests, but they do accept fee waivers. So if you qualify for free or reduced lunch or have experienced financial hardship recently, talk to your high school counselor and they'll be able to give you a fee waiver. When your scores are evaluated, some schools will say that they super score. So that just means that they're going to if you've taken the ACT more than once or the SAT more than once, they're going to take your highest subset score and combine that to put together your super score and use that score for admission. So for example, if you take the SAT twice, they're going to take your highest reading score and your highest math score, combine those from the two tests that you took and use that for evaluating your application. There are some amazing test resources out there. captest.com is a really great resource. There are some test optional schools out there, as I said before, so you can check out fairtest.org or go to our COVID resource site at cfnc.org/COVID to see who is waiving scores right now. All right. Another thing that some people love, some people don't, but I will let you know it is a very important part of your application. College essays are like the color to your college application. The application itself asks questions like, what your name is, where do you go to high school, what's your GPA? Your essay itself gives them, the reader, the admissions counselor, a better understanding of who you are as a person. So when you're writing your college essay, tell your story. Do not write what you think colleges want to hear. Don't write a very generic essay that is a list of accomplishments that are already on your application. And make sure that you proofread. Make sure you actually get somebody else to proofread it as well. But as you're writing the essay, make sure that you answer the prompt. They have the prompt for a reason. They're asking that question for a reason. So stick to the prompt. Stay within the length requirements. When I was in college admissions, there were times where I had 50 applications to get through in one day. So they have length requirements to ensure that the person reading it can dedicate that much time to your application. So just keep that in mind. Personalize your essay. Tell your story. This is one of the few times in your life where you get to talk about how awesome you are, and somebody gets paid to care and pay you for it through scholarship opportunities or through college admission. So just keep that in mind. Read it aloud to yourself and to other people and get feedback before you submit it to a college. My favorite part of reading college applications used to be the college essay, because I learned so much about students. I got to hear so many amazing stories. So tell your story, take the time to talk about what makes you happy and or whatever the prompt is. Make sure that you go in depth on it and make it personal. All right, we are going to switch gears now, and Devin is going to talk about the financial aid process, but this is a good time to stop for a second and see if anybody has any questions in the chat or anything like that. Skip, Soretta, Tamika, do we have any questions that I can answer aloud?
I'll say one, Brittany, just so, because I think a lot of students may be thinking this, is we had a student to ask, or someone asked, Faith asked if it would be, how terrible, if you're not good at taking tests, could that mean that you, does that mean that you can't get into a college? And we would just kind of want to clarify, of course, that doesn't mean that, but, just kind of speak on that a little bit more, that if you are a terrible test taker, that does not limit you from going to college. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Mm-hmm. Overall, when the colleges are looking at your application, they're looking at all the components together. So if you're not a great test taker, they're going to look at your GPA to see if your GPA is strong. You're going to look to see how you did in the classroom. Overall, your test scores are just one small component. And if you're worried about your test scores, you can write a letter to the college or to an admissions counselor and let them know that you're not great at testing, but here are the strategies you use to improve, or I make sure that I focus in the classroom and this is where my passions are, to give them a better understanding of maybe why you're not the best test taker or ways that you offset that, in the classroom. So I don't want you to worry if you are not the best test taker. Utilize resources in your community when it comes to SAT and ACT prep. And you can always check out the resources that we provide on cfnc.org to help you become a better test taker. But communication is key when it comes to applying to college. Communicate that with colleges. I also used to run into students all the time that would say, oh my gosh, my SAT score was so bad. And then they would tell me their score and I would be like, that's not a bad score at all. So I also encourage students to give yourself a little credit and not think that your score is terrible, because you really don't know what everybody else around you score is. That's why it's important to communicate with the college, and they can give you a better understanding of where you lie when it comes to being competitive for a college.
Hey, Brittany, this is Skip.
Hey.
Real quick, can you elaborate on where students can find specific essay prompts?
Sure. So the Common Application typically releases their essay prompts for the next year in May. So juniors, keep a lookout for that. If you are planning on applying via Common Application or want to get a better understanding of what college essay prompts look like, they typically will release those in late April, early May. You can also call the school and ask if they release their essay prompts. Sometimes the school will actually have their essay prompt on their application or on their website. I like to tell students, if you're worried about the essay and you don't know where to start, answer these 2 questions in a 1-page essay. Why do you want to go to college, and what can you contribute to a college campus? And that will give you a good template to start with when you start filling out these college applications, because a lot of the essays are going to allude to those 2 questions in some type of way.
Okay, I got another one for you, and it kind of relates back to super scoring. Can you send specific scores, like from the SAT or the ACT, or can you just send like maybe your math score? Or can you kind of elaborate on the super scoring aspect of the process?
Sure. So what happens is when you take the SAT or ACT, you're going to list schools that you would like these scores to be sent to, and they'll automatically send to the school when the scores are released. Or you can go through the ACT website or the College Board website for the SAT and self-select the schools that you'd like to send to after the fact. But they're going to send the whole score. The school is going to get a score report, and the school will have a subset of all of your scores broken down by subject itself. They will then comb through those scores and take the highest of each subject and combine those and use that for admission. Does that answer the question?
Does for me, absolutely.
Any other questions before we turn it over to Devin?
I think we're caught up on all of them. I think we're caught up.
Okay, and we will have time for questions at the end. Thank you guys for your patience tonight and tuning in. And we're going to turn it over to Devin to talk about financial aid.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brittany. That was so wonderful. You had such great information, and I'm sure that everybody is super excited to get started on the application process, just knowing all that stuff. You're just a wealth of information, so I really appreciate that. I'm going to talk about financial aid and paying for college, because this is definitely part of the college application process. In some ways, it's far less exciting, right? It's not the exciting part of the process, but it's so necessary so that you know how to afford this college dream, right? So we're going to dive into some of the bigger process details, and we'll get to some scholarship information. We're just going to get into it. So first, before you get into the financial aid process, I really encourage you, when you're doing that college exploration, to start looking at the college websites, not only for that admissions information, but also for the financial aid information. In particular, to start with, I really want you to understand what each college says their college cost is, right? Each college is going to put on their college website something called their cost of attendance. And so that is going to be the details of what their students spend on average in a year to go to that school. It's going to be a breakdown. It's going to be comprised of the direct costs. Now, these are going to be sort of more exact costs, because these are the costs that are billed directly to the college, right? Tuition or your seat in a class, any required fees that college might have are going to be listed. Those are going to vary from college to college, especially when you're talking about community colleges versus four-year colleges. When students are living on campus, you've got more services. And so the four-year colleges tend to have more fees associated with those services. So just be aware there's going to be a range of what those fees can look like from college to college. Then room and board. If you're living on a college campus, you're going to get billed for room and board directly by that college. If, however, you're living off campus, either you are commuting to a community college or commuting even to a four-year college because you have an off-campus apartment or living at home, you're still going to need to pay for those things. So it's always a good idea to make sure that you're keeping those in your budget, even though those two things will become indirect costs, even if you're not living on campus. Now, some of the other indirect costs are going to be books and supplies. So that's going to be, obviously your books for your classes, but also there might be a variety of different kinds of supplies depending on what major you're going into. Also, transportation. Now, this doesn't refer to the bus around campus. This refers to your personal transportation to and from campus. If you have a car parked on campus, you're probably going to need to pay for a parking permit. And if you are going to a school that's farther away, obviously that's going to cost more if you're going back and forth to that college. So obviously there's commuter transportation, but then there's also costs associated with living on campus of a campus that's farther away. If you have to take a flight to and from that school for breaks, that's obviously going to cost more than a quick car ride. So those are things that are going to vary from person to person. And then personal and miscellaneous, again, there's going to be some variety in there because it depends on what you generally want to spend on different things. Do you want to go out for pizza with friends every once in a while? If you want to buy a shirt or have some tissues in your dorm room, that kind of thing, that's what that's talking about. And so those indirect costs are essentially an average of what students spend in a given year at that school, at that institution. So even though they're giving you that cost of attendance for what they think their students spend, just be aware that you can trim some of those costs, right? You could possibly spend more, but hopefully you're going to be mindful and try to spend a little bit less. Maybe you're going to get a rental textbook if they have a rental textbook program at your school. Perhaps you're going to look for used textbooks if you're, if you don't have a rental textbook program, or if you want to make sure you can write in that book, you can go look for a used textbook. So there's ways to kind of trim some of these costs, right? So all that stuff together is that cost of attendance, and it's essentially the budget. It's what you're trying to find money for, find financial aid to pay for. And so there is a range of costs for colleges across the state. You can see here, these are averages for different kinds of colleges in North Carolina. But again, these are averages. So even within each of these categories, there are schools that are going to cost more and going to cost less. As Ms. Privet mentioned earlier, the private colleges, they have an initial sticker price that looks a little bit higher sometimes, but just be aware that these sticker prices are not what you ultimately end up paying guaranteed after you go through the financial aid process, right? So some people may end up paying full price, but most people end up not paying this exact full amount of college after they've gone through that financial aid process. So financial aid really just refers to any money that pays for college or vocational school. And it can look a bunch of different ways, right? So you could either receive gift aid, which is that free money, scholarships and grants, or self-help aid, which is called self-help because you're contributing somehow, whether by getting loans because you have to pay those back, or maybe it's that you get a part-time job or are offered work study, which is a job on campus. It's a federal program that you might qualify for. The two reasons that you might receive those kinds of aid are either need-based or merit-based. So need-based is going to be based on the family's finances, and it's usually that has something to do with the FAFSA, which we're going to talk about in a second. And then there's merit-based aid, and that can be based on a student's characteristics. Also be aware that there is a little bit of wiggle room in between those. Sometimes for private scholarships, they might have aspects of both need-based components and merit-based components in there. So the first thing I do want to mention in terms of applying for financial aid in North Carolina is the residency determination service. Not a lot of people think about this as financial aid, but I think this is a financial aid form for North Carolina for two reasons. One, you need to complete it and be found an in-state resident in order to receive the cheaper rate, the lower rate of in-state tuition at any North Carolina public or college or university, pardon me. The second reason is because whether you're applying to a 2-year community college, a 4-year college, public or private in North Carolina, you might find that you're eligible for North Carolina state grants if you're found to be an in-state resident. So those are the two reasons that you really want to complete that RDS, that Residency Determination Service interview. You can find that on CFNC. You're going to use your CFNC username and password to log in, and you don't want to start that right away though. You're going to start that no earlier than July prior to your senior year so that it can be an active consideration by the time you start college the following year. And you only need to complete this form once, as long as you stay continuously enrolled in whatever North Carolina college you decide to go to. So that's kind of nice, is what you can complete it once and be done with that process. Now, the other financial aid form that I'm hopeful that you heard about already is the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. This is the primary application for any need-based aid, and it's a national application. So unlike the RDS, which is just for North Carolina schools, the FAFSA is actually a national application. So you're going to complete this no matter where you're applying, 2-year, 4-year, anywhere across the country. And you're going to really start this alongside your application process. Something that I've seen over the years is families and students waiting until after they've already finished the admissions application process to start this financial aid process, but it really needs to be happening in tandem alongside that application process. The other form that I did want to mention briefly is the CSS profile. Now, this is far less common, but you may find that you're asked to complete this additional form. It's not used instead of the FAFSA, but some schools want to dig a little bit deeper into your finances to see what else you might qualify for. So it's not necessarily a bad thing if they ask for that, because they're really trying to see if you qualify for additional money. But because there is a fee to send it to schools, I don't necessarily recommend doing this out of the gate, unless you're asked to do it. And there are only 5 North Carolina schools that ask for this form, and those are listed on the screen. So just be aware, if you're applying to any of those 5, you may be asked to complete that form. So the FAFSA is going to help you qualify for various types of that gift aid and that self-help aid from a variety of different sources, which is why we say this is the place to start, is filling out your FAFSA. You may qualify for aid from the federal government, from North Carolina state grant funds. You might qualify from for any institutional aid from the colleges that they might have. And then some private scholarships will also ask for the results of your FAFSA to see if you qualify for their need-based components to those scholarships. So there's a number of ways that FAFSA can really help you find that aid. You can find the FAFSA at studentaid.gov or FAFSA.gov, or you can even download a free app on your phone. You can start the whole process, you can start it and finish it on your phone if that's going to be easier for you. The important part is that you do this process. When does it happen? Well, the application itself doesn't actually open till October 1st, your senior year of high school, for the following year's aid year. But you can create your account or your FSA ID at any time. Generally speaking, most students are going to be dependents, still living with their parents. So you're going to need to have a student FSA ID, and then one parent is also going to be creating an FSA ID. It's a good idea to have that because it's going to be sort of a gate opener to some of the pieces of the process that make it go a little bit smoother, and I'll talk about that in a second. So college deadlines will vary, but generally speaking, as soon as possible is best. It opens October 1st. I recommend starting that process when it opens and seeing if you can't complete that FAFSA in October or November, because some of those free funds, right, that gift aid can be first come, first serve based on the date that you submit the FAFSA in addition to eligibility. So doing it sooner is going to ensure that you receive any and all of the aid that you possibly qualify for. And this one is an annual application. You need to fill out the FAFSA for each year that you want to receive aid. These are the things that you'll need to complete the FAFSA and or the RDS. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I just wanted you to see that there's some overlap here. So some families, even though you can complete the RDS starting in July, some families choose to wait to do it until October so that they can actually sit down and do both forms at the same time, since they ask for similar items. So you can see all of this information on cfnc.org. So you don't have to memorize this. It's available to you when you need it. And so just some general FAFSA tips. Students, use a personal email, not a school email. That school email will go away once you graduate. And you're going to need to log into this FAFSA every year that you need aid. So you definitely want to use that personal email that you're going to have for years to come. I recommend also just using that email, just using one dedicated email for all college application and financial aid purposes. And then you have everything in one place and you're not necessarily losing things in the shuffle of your regular email. Gather all your documents prior to starting the FAFSA is one of the biggest tips that I have. It's going to make the process less frustrating and go much more smoothly if you have everything set to go. It'll make the application go a lot quicker as well. So if you have all your documentation, it can take as little as 30 to 45 minutes to finish the FAFSA from start to finish. And it actually gets less than that over time because some of the fields are auto-populated for the next year that you fill out the FAFSA. So that's something to look forward to. Make sure to complete the correct FAFSA application as well. When you go onto the FAFSA site, there's going to be 2 different FAFSA applications open, and it's going to have the 2 different school years on there. Just make sure to select the enrollment year, the year for which you're seeking aid, not necessarily the year that you're in. Okay, so just make sure to select the appropriate year for that so that you don't waste your time filling out the wrong form. If you're eligible, I highly recommend using the IRS data retrieval tool. Remember how I mentioned a second ago that the FSA ID is going to open some gates for you in terms of making this process go smoother? Well, this is it. The IRS data retrieval tool, if you have an FSA ID that's already been verified with your social security number, and you have an eligible tax status, you can actually link up to the IRS and they can pull in your tax information, which can make that process go much more smoothly because you don't have to manually enter all of your tax data from your actual taxes. And that can be, students can be eligible for that and parents can be eligible for that. So I do recommend using that if you are presented with that option. It also reduces the chances that you'll be selected to submit additional documentation to verify your financial information. Double check, triple check, really make sure all your information is correct on the FAFSA form and matches other documentation. In particular, the social security number, definitely, absolutely make sure that that's correct, but also when you're entering your information to connect to that IRS data retrieval tool, double check the information that you're entering on there matches your tax return, even down to the level of how you write out your address, whether you abbreviate Lane or spell it out, okay? Because it is a computer match, we want everything to match up perfectly and go smoothly. Make sure also, students, that you add all the schools that you're considering applying to, even if you haven't even started their application yet. It's just going to make the process go a lot more smoothly if you can just add them all at the get-go. You can add up to 10 schools at a time. So definitely add all the schools you're even thinking about. If you do decide to apply to another school later that you didn't add, you can log back on the system and add that school afterwards, though. Also, make sure to check your school's websites for any priority deadlines for the FAFSA. Again, complete it as soon as possible, but it's always good to know what those deadlines are. Make sure when you get to the end of the form to sign and submit the FAFSA. There's sort of a 2-step process. You both have to, the student needs to sign it, the parent needs to sign it, and then you click submit. If you see a confirmation page come up, you know you've done that correctly. Also, look out for that confirmation page to get emailed to the student's email on file. The next thing I want you to look out for in that student email is the student aid report. This is a very important document for financial aid. So I want you to keep an eye out for it. If you submit electronically, it should come to you about a week after you click submit on the FAFSA. This student aid report is going to tell you a few very important things. It's going to tell you whether your FAFSA is complete, whether there's any errors that need addressing or anything that you need to fix on that FAFSA application. It's also going to tell you if you've been selected for something called verification, where you need to submit additional documents to the financial aid offices. So those are a few really important things. But one of the biggest things that I want you to look out for is something called the EFC. The results of the FAFSA are the expected family contribution, or the EFC. And what that is by the FAFSA calculations, what your family can reasonably be expected to afford in a given year for college. So it's a really important number because that is the number that colleges then use to start determining what your student qualifies for in need-based aid. Okay, so they take that cost of attendance that we talked about a little earlier, they subtract that EFC, and what's left over is eligibility for need-based aid. Now, financial aid offices take that and they use that information to try to find you any of the aid that you might qualify for. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean they can always meet 100% of that number, but that's their goal, is to try to meet as much of that number as they can find funds for you. So this is a question we get asked a lot lately. What if our financial situation has changed, or if we have a special circumstance that just isn't accounted for on that FAFSA form? Some families get that EFC and they think, this doesn't really represent my family's finances for whatever reason, right? And there's just conditions that can't be documented on the FAFSA. So my best recommendation is to call a financial aid office as soon as you know that there's something special about your circumstances, or you know that there's been a change to your finances that's not accounted for on that FAFSA, and explain the situation. If you qualify, they can apply something called professional judgment, which is essentially like an appeal, where you would provide documentation about what's going on. So definitely keep any documents related to that situation. And you'll also probably need to either write a letter or fill out a specific form for that college. Every college handles it slightly different, but every college has a process like this. So definitely call them whenever you know that there's a situation like this, whether it's early in the process or even after you've received your offer letter. You can always call and talk to them about something that's going on with your family's finances. And you can find tons of resources for all of this stuff, all of the paying for college FAFSA on cfnc.org. A couple of the resources I really like, we've got FAFSA how-to videos, we've got a Helping You Pay for College series, so there's a bunch of videos on there, but also there's a local assistance map, which I really, really like, because it's a list of all the local college financial aid offices who are absolutely happy to help you with FAFSA questions, general FAFSA questions. Again, if it's a special circumstance, you're probably better off calling your specific college, but if it's a general FAFSA question, you could call the local community college or a four-year college that you like. It doesn't really matter for the general FAFSA information. You can call any of those financial aid professionals. So what else can I do to pay for college? I know a lot of you at the beginning of this session said, I really need to know about scholarships. So let's get into it. Let's talk about scholarships. So scholarships are, there's so many scholarships out there, and they can be need-based, or they can be merit-based, or again, they can have components of both. Some examples of merit-based scholarships, though, academic scholarships, based on possibly GPA, SAT or ACT scores, perhaps an essay that the student needs to write. That I think gets talked about a lot, right? Get that academic scholarship, but there's a lot of other ways that students can find scholarships. It could be a community service-based scholarship. So there are community organizations like Rotary Club, or perhaps Kiwanis, or there's lots of independent organizations that want to support students who are involved in their communities. Also faith organizations, right, really value that community service. Also, you can find a merit-based scholarship for a talent that you have, like it could be an academic talent, okay, like earlier, or it could be an athletic talent, it could be fine arts or theater or music. There's so many talented people in the world, and there's scholarships for all of those people. Also know that there's some ROTC scholarships, right? That's a really dedicated field for students that are into that military path or looking to go into ROTC in college. Those are out there. Also, it could be based on your career choices or a characteristic that you have. So it could be something like, it could be a combination of these. It could be something like a scholarship for women in STEM. That was a popular one I've seen a couple of times. But there's all sorts of combinations of everybody's unique identity characteristics, right? And so I do encourage you to just think about, what are your characteristics and what are your qualities that might have a scholarship out there. We talk about things like, there's a left-handed scholarship or a redheaded people scholarship. There really is a scholarship out there for sort of everybody's characteristics and talents. Also know that you can even find scholarships based on not just race and gender, but also disability. There are specific scholarships out there for specific conditions, medical conditions, families that are impacted by those, students with specific disabilities. You can even connect with your local vocational rehab organization. They have scholarship money also. And there's just so many things out there. So that's the bottom line. Just know that there's scholarships for almost everything. Where else can I find scholarships though? Where can I find those? There's unfortunately not one place to find scholarships. And so that's part of this process, this college process and the scholarship process, is understanding that about 90% of the scholarship process is actually finding those scholarships, right? Finding the ones that you're eligible for and that you want to apply to, which is why we really emphasize starting this process now and trying to find those scholarships that maybe even you can't apply to yet, but just keep taking notice of them, keeping track of them so that you can apply to them in senior year and you already know what you're going to apply to. It's going to save you a lot of time in senior year. So college scholarships, definitely visit those college websites. Be aware that many of them have fall deadlines and some are automatic when you apply. So they're using that admissions application to determine whether or not you qualify for some of that scholarship money, those merit scholarships. Or you might have an outside scholarship as well, right? So you might have an outside scholarship application that you can access at the same time as you're applying for admission, or you might have an application that you gain access to once you've applied. So just look on those colleges' websites to see what their process looks like. Also, cfnc.org, of course, has a lot of scholarships. Last time I looked yesterday, it was at 120 scholarships listed on there. And those are throughout the state. Some of them are for specific regions. Some of them are statewide. It just really depends. But we've got a lot on there. And the deadlines on there can be year round. They kind of come up throughout the year. A couple of things I did want to make sure you're aware of you're going to find on that search: forgivable education loans for service are a really great opportunity. I know it says loan in the title, but it's the best kind of loan because that's the kind of loan that can become a scholarship if you serve in a specific critical needs field in North Carolina after you graduate. So look on cfnc.org/FELS, FELS, for the list of professions that are eligible, but in general, they are fields in education, clinical mental health counseling, and allied health fields. So definitely check that out if those are any of the careers that you're thinking of. Also, Golden Leaf scholarships, there's 2-year and 4-year scholarships that go across different counties in North Carolina. NC Reach is for students who have been in foster care. Teaching fellows, again, this is at specific colleges in North Carolina, but if you are looking to go into education, that can be an awesome scholarship opportunity as well. Then I want you to look at local scholarships. Local scholarships can be a really good bet for applying because there's money that needs to go to students at your school, at your high school. There's money that needs to go to students in your town or in your county or in your region. And so you've just got fewer applicants that you're competing against for those funds as compared to statewide or national scholarships. So that's why I always say local scholarships are a really great way to try and find money for college. Definitely get connected with wherever your high school counselor shares that information because they receive a lot of that information. And so they try to put that out either on their website, their counseling or high school website, or perhaps they have a bulletin board or they have an email listserv. Also, if you have a college access advisor like a project discovery or college advising corps, any of them, definitely get connected with them as well because they're going to have access to a lot of that information. Many of the local scholarships, but not all, have spring deadlines. So just be aware of that, that the bulk of them are due in the spring. And definitely just try to find scholarships wherever you're going. Just have it on your mind. You know, maybe you are out and you see a bulletin board with various information. Somebody might have put up a flyer about a scholarship you might qualify for. Check out local websites. Put it out on social media, you know, that you're looking for scholarships for college. Maybe say what career you want to go into. You never know what people might have. And people out there really do want to help you with this process. There's a lot of different scholarship organizations. You know, you might have a scholarship through your parents' employer. So definitely ask them to look for that, or your student employers, you know, like if you work at Ingalls or Target, or, you know, there's a lot of student employers that offer scholarships for students that are going to college as well. Also, churches, faith-based organizations, civic organizations in your community. Also look at community foundations. So out here we have the Community Foundation of Western North Carolina, but there are community foundations in every region in this state. And there's also a Community Foundation of North Carolina. So definitely look at that because those community foundations actually house a number of different scholarships to apply to in one location. So definitely look at that. Also, school district foundations. So we have a Buncombe County Schools Foundation, and there's a number of scholarships that students from Buncombe County Schools can apply to. So check out your school district's school foundations, and also booster clubs and alumni associations, either of your high school or even look at the college that you're looking to attend. I've worked with students that have received scholarships also from sororities or fraternities that their parents were involved in and that they plan to get involved with in college. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. It's just kind of putting the word out and looking as many places as possible. And then there's also national scholarship searches. There's a number of scholarship searches out there. You can see there's a pretty big list on the screen right now. And I do want to mention that you can definitely Google scholarships as well. You can put in your characteristics or your career, that list of traits that you have or talents that you have, try to play with different keywords and put in scholarship and see what comes up. The only thing that I would say is to really be cautious about scholarships, national scholarships in particular, because there are scams out there, unfortunately, and we just want you to be wise to that. You should never have to pay for scholarship information. If they're asking you for things up front, like a credit card or your social security number, it may not be a legit scholarship. So I definitely just want you to be very wise to that. If it sounds too good to be true, like if you get an email saying guaranteed scholarship, that's probably too good to be true. So definitely, if you have any doubts, take that scholarship information and go to a school counselor, a college access advisor, a trusted adult that you can trust to put eyes on that and give you a second opinion about that scholarship. Okay, so this is the big picture. When you take all of this stuff together, the college admission stuff, the financial aid stuff, these are some things you can do to get started. Of course, you knew we were going to say this, but stay on track academically and continue to grow and take on leadership roles in those things that you're interested in. The second thing is, of course, create that free CFNC account so that you can access a lot of great college resources and tools. You can save a lot of stuff once you have that account. So that's the second thing we would recommend. You're going to explore colleges that interest you, begin to narrow your list of colleges that you might want to apply to. Make sure to review those application requirements, deadlines, and scholarships. I do recommend that you start really keeping track of things in one place, right? So have a dedicated folder on your computer or even a physical folder. I don't know if anybody does that anymore, but definitely start to keep things organized in one space. Create your resume if you don't have one already. Start your college essay. Sometimes people are really surprised at how long it takes them to get to the final draft of their college essay. So the sooner you start, the sooner you can get a lot of people to look at that information and give you feedback and make it final. Also, consider who you want to ask for those recommendation requests. Who are the adults in your life that you feel that they could represent you well in a letter and that you have a connection with, that can speak to your abilities as a student and as a person. Also, talk with your family about college finances. Find out if you have a college savings plan or what the thinking is about how you all are going to be able to pay for college together, or what the budget is, what you're looking for. That's a really important conversation to have now so that you're not surprised when you get later on in the process. Keep looking for scholarships, keep a list with those deadlines and requirements so you know what's coming up over the next year, and find out how your school counselor is distributing that scholarship information. You can create your FSA IDs right now, but just remember that you shouldn't complete RDS until at least July. And again, stay organized. You're going to want to keep passwords, application information, scholarship information. Just keep it in a central location. As you complete college applications, you're going to find that you're going to get a bunch of portals or, passwords for things. And you just want to try and keep them as organized as possible to reduce the stress on you. And just know that you can always get connected with us to continue learning about this process. We've tried to give you an overview of what to expect, but certainly we know that there's more to the process. Especially as you get into it, you're probably going to come up with more questions, but that's okay. There's a lot of resources to help you. You can connect with us on cfnc.org, of course, or you can also check out a lot of our great how-to videos, helpful videos about all the aspects of the college process on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. You can also connect with College Foundation on Facebook or Instagram, or you can connect with a specific regional reps for your area. I've listed the example for me and for Brittany, but you can see the basic formula is Devin at CFNC, Brittany at CFNC. You kind of get the idea. So those are our folks. Those are our friendly faces. And if you see on the left, you can see where you're at. We're divided throughout the state. We have reps all over the place, and we even have 2 reps who are Spanish services reps, dedicated to helping those folks who are more comfortable in Spanish in our state. So definitely connecting with us on social media is one really great way to keep connected with, the college process, financial aid process, all the things that come up. And connecting with your specific regional rep can be great because we try to send out information that's specific to our region as well as statewide.
Hey, Brittany, I got a question for you real quick.
Sure.
So students asking, would it be a better idea to apply to a school that has their intended major but super competitive, or should they attend a college where their major is intended but not competitive?
I was just reading that question. I think it's a fantastic question to ask. And I would pick a school based on where you feel more comfortable, because where you feel more comfortable is where you're going to be more successful. So if you feel more comfortable in a competitive environment and having competition and having people push you is more, it helps you become successful, and that's where you perform your best, do that. But if you perform better in an environment where you have more support when it comes to asking questions and a smaller kind of environment, more insulated environment, start thinking about that. I would start thinking about what you want to get from that experience within that major, not necessarily getting in. I will say most colleges don't admit based on major. There are very few majors that are going to be looked at as an incoming freshman. So a lot of times engineering and nursing programs are going to look at your high school information, but everything else, like I said before, you don't declare a major until your sophomore year anyway. So I would start, if you go on a campus tour, start asking if you can sit in on a class within your desired major or talk to a professor from your desired major, and make those connections before you commit to a school to see if that's whatever environment makes you the most comfortable. Great question. Any other questions we can answer for students?
Brittany, we have some questions about the community college application.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just kind of touch on that process briefly?
Sure. The community college application is a lot less comprehensive than a four-year school. So they're going to typically ask for the application itself, but you can find all 58 community colleges applications on cfnc.org. And you'll apply by answering questions about your name, where you live, demographic information, like where you go to high school, how you identify, all that stuff. And then you'll submit your high school transcript. Then you'll receive communication from the community college to let you know that you've been accepted. We call that open enrollment. So everyone gets accepted to a community college. However, they may contact you and ask you to take an entrance exam or a placement exam to get into specific courses to see where you lie academically. But overall, the application process to community colleges is pretty cut and dry.
Okay, so now you've got the community college application dialed in. How about the FAFSA? When is it too late to complete the FAFSA?
So it's never too late to complete the FAFSA, but we encourage students to do it early. So early means that the FAFSA opens October 1st each year for the upcoming school year. So as juniors, your FAFSA for fall of 2022 is going to open October 1st of this year. We recommend that you complete it in the month of October to ensure that you are granted the money that you qualify for. And the main reason we say that is because you're applying for federal and state funds. And North Carolina's actually run out of state funds in the past, typically in the spring semester. So the earlier you apply, the more guaranteed money you are qualifying for. So October 1st of your senior year is the best time to complete your FAFSA.
I'm not seeing any more questions. I think we're good to go.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us, everyone. We hope you got a lot of useful information as you go into this process. Thank you so much to my fellow reps. We had some really great support in the chat to help answer your questions as we went. And thank you also to my colleague, Brittany, who is amazing, and I really appreciate all of her insights.
Thank you so much, Devin. It does look like we have one last question in the chat.
And it's a good one.
It is a really good one, so I want to make sure that we touch on this. Larissa says that I'm looking to major in the medical field. Would you recommend starting at a community college for 2 years and then transferring to a 4-year university? Devin, do you want to touch on that? I don't mind either way.
You know, majoring in the medical field, it really just depends on what you're going into, what route you could take. So you could start at a community college and transfer to a 4-year university, or depending on the field you're looking to go into, like for instance, my husband is an X-ray tech. He only needed a 2-year degree. And in fact, for his program, they prefer the 2-year degree because there's not necessarily a 4-year degree that gets them that same information. So it really does depend on what field you're going into. If you're going to the 4-year degree, there's not going to be a downside to starting at a community college though. Starting those classes at a community college can save you money on what could potentially, if you're going to be a doctor, be a very long, right, education career, right? If you've got to go to school for like 7 or 8 years, it might be nice to save a little bit of money and the first couple of years and start at a community college. Our community colleges are very rigorous. They have this, you are getting the same credits for the same kinds of classes as you would at those 4-year colleges. My best advice, though, would be to know what school you want to transfer to if you're starting at that 2-year. Because the sooner you know what college you want to, 4-year college you want to transfer to from that community college, the sooner you can start having those conversations with both the community college advisor and any transfer advisors at that 4-year college to just make sure all of your credits are going to sync up appropriately and that process is going to go smoothly. I would also recommend looking at the list on cfnc.org of any guaranteed admissions programs or guaranteed transfer programs. Those are going to be programs between community colleges and 4-year colleges in universities in North Carolina, where it's basically you're applying to both programs at the same time, and it's really a seamless transfer process, and they really support you throughout that transfer process.
Awesome. All right, one last question, and then we'll wrap it up for the evening. Advice to my junior who has applied to a lot of different scholarships but hasn't gotten one yet. I will say one of my favorite stories about scholarships is I know an admissions counselor at UNCW who is a first-generation American. She's also a first-generation college student, and she knew paying for college was going to be a struggle for her family. So she applied to over 45 different scholarships as a high school senior. She only received 3 of those scholarships, but all 3 of those scholarships covered tuition and fees for college for her for all 4 years. So she graduated debt-free. So I tell students to just keep it up, keep applying. You just never know which one you're going to get. Cast a wide net, because the more you apply, the more opportunities you are putting yourself in front of. And it seems arduous and tedious right now, but I promise you it will pay off in the end. There are scholarships out there, and communicate with colleges. Let them know that you want to go here, but you have financial need, and colleges will work with you. They don't always work out the way sometimes we think they can, because finances are limited and they do have a whole freshman class that they're catering to, but you just never know what's out there until you ask. Like they say, closed mouths don't get fed. So definitely cast out a wide net when applying to scholarships and communicate with these colleges. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming this evening. We really appreciate you spending time with us. As you can see, our email addresses are on here. So if you do have specific questions, feel free to email us and we'll be more than happy to point you in the right direction. Please know that our role is matching you with resources. So we may not be able to answer your questions, the nitty-gritty personal questions, but we are definitely going to be able to provide you with resources to get you where you need to go. So thank you for spending time with us this evening, and we hope you have a wonderful evening and rest of your junior year.